Hello, good morning. Christine Barnes here. I'm a natural medicine expert, and I'd just like to say thanks for spending this time with me. We're going to just spend a few moments talking about leaky gut, also known as intestinal permeability. So, firstly, let me say thanks to Megan for inviting me this morning to chat with you about gut health. It's so important for all of us. So thanks, Megan. You're doing a great job here with this community. And thanks for everybody to spend time out of their busy days and schedules to really invest in gut health. So let's get going and feel free to post any comments or questions you have. I'll try and keep up with them. So, firstly, a little bit about my background. So, I work worldwide online, and I'm a naturopath and I have a master's degree in wellness. So I focus on complex resistant health cases. So most of those have a level of leaky gut and or other health issues as combined, making up a very complex and resistant situation. And that's my speciality. That's my focus in the work that I do. My clinic's called the Bodyguard Clinic. So if you are Googling me, make sure you put naturopath in there, otherwise you'll get the Bodyguard, the movie. So my website is thebodyguard.com.au, and I also have a website under my name, christinebarnes.com.au, and you can follow me on Instagram, christinebarnes_the bodyguard. So let's talk about leaky gut. Leaky gut's interesting. I'm often these days approached with people saying, "Oh, I've got a diagnosis of leaky gut." Now, leaky gut is actually a symptom of other things. So that's really important to remember. I very rarely, and in all my many years of clinical practice, very rarely seen just a leaky gut. I would suggest that is an early stage of other things that are imbalance. So leaky gut is the colloquial term. It's not a medical term. So medical term, or if you're seeking to actually test to see what your gut permeability is, the test is actually intestinal permeability test, and it's commonly done with urine these days. The test itself is quite economical, around 135 Australian dollars. It's a urine test, very easy to do, even in times of COVID where we're not able to get around as easy as possible. Often you can get this test done at home just by ordering a test kit. But let's just say that you're positive for leaky gut. Really, then what do you do? The steps in discovery of health issues are really important to focus on because sometimes it can mislead us. So, for instance, let's just say we've only done a leaky gut test. We're positive for that. It's quite significant, leaky or permeable intestinal gut. And let's say we treat it, and I will talk about possible things to consider for correcting and healing a leaky gut. So I would suggest then we're looking for why is the gut so leaky, and often it's because of gut dysbiosis. So when we talk about dysbiosis, it's really just a fancy term for imbalance. And when we're talking about gut that's out of balance, generally we're talking about the microbiome. So sometimes it's a good idea then to sort of secondary, if you haven't already tested the microbiome, is to actually have a microbiome test. So that would be building on that. But there might be more. Let's just say that the microbiome comes back, the test result is not too bad, and is out of balance with the level of the leaky gut. Then we might need to dig deeper, and sometimes it's due to heavy metals. So these can be tested. I like the first line test of doing a hair tissue mineral analysis because it tells us so much about overall health and wellness. So I find that really handy. So that's something that you can have a look into, and again, quite an economical test that gives you a lot of information. Great to see you here, Megan. Thanks for popping in for the chat this morning. Please feel free to post any questions that you may have or anything about your experience with leaky gut. And of course, to make sure you can hear me and all of that's going well. So, leaky gut, I think, is really just one aspect of a bigger picture. It's about the membrane and the epithelial tissue and the gut barriers. So when we think about the gut and our digestive system, it's really everything from right up here from our mouth all the way down to our anus. And we're really just one long tube. So the outer part of that tube has like a skin, if you like, and we want those junctions to be really tight. Yeah. So this is this barrier. Now, when they're not tight and they're a little bit loose, and I'm giving you an example with my hands, this is on a microscopic level, yeah, but if they're a little bit loose and those junctions aren't nice and tight and firm, food particles, and again, it's not a whole piece of chicken passing through, it's micro pieces of partially digested food pass through. And then that can create a secondary issue with the autoimmune response. So the immune system, when it's working really well, it's designed to actually identify anything that isn't where it should be. And so food particles that might be passing through this membrane that should be nice and tight junctions, if it's loose, and we have food that passes through that membrane, the immune system can switch on and go, warning, warning, warning. I think old school TV, so I go, warning, warning, Will Robinson, which is the old Lost in Space. If you're sort of around my age, you might remember Lost in Space. But basically, it's foreign body that's not where it's supposed to be. It can switch on the immune system. The immune system then is trying to get rid of it, and it might be over producing immune cells to grab those foreign food aspects, but it can be food, it can be bacteria, all those things that can pass through that membrane. Now we've got many different membranes that we need to keep healthy. Most people are familiar with the blood-brain membrane, yeah? So our gut is another one of those. So very important to keep healthy. And any work that we do with our health to manage or optimize, resolve leaky gut scenarios, or keep that intestinal permeability really healthy and strong is going to help all of our other membranes in our body as well. So that's really important and very helpful for overall health and wellness. So it's very worthwhile making sure that we've got a healthy intestinal area that is not leaky and it's not permeable, so things can't pass through. Yeah. So if you've got an autoimmune condition, if you've got then leaky gut, and they commonly go together, that's going to make your autoimmune condition worse. So sometimes we see these autoimmune conditions that we're doing everything, and I mentor practitioners worldwide as well, and I often get calls from naturopaths go, I'm working with this autoimmune condition, I've done everything that should have resolved it, but it's still not being resolved. And often we see that the leaky gut hasn't been resolved, and the microbiome hasn't been rebalanced. And again, these are little partners that go towards that optimal health and wellness. So if you've got an autoimmune condition, or it may not be a diagnosed autoimmune condition, it may be that you've got eczema or skin rashes or food sensitivities, any of those sorts of things could be from intestinal permeability. And there's actually quite a wide range of symptoms that you could experience from having intestinal permeability or leaky gut. So general inflammation, so that could be expressing as loose bowels, so diarrhea. It could be expressing as skin issues, or you may have actually a diagnosis of something like autoimmune antibodies for thyroid, commonly are connected with gut opportunistic gut bacteria overgrowths in the gut, and along with that we will have a leaky gut. So thyroid issues, everything under that umbrella of thyroid. Arthritic issues, which again can be very broad spectrum, everything from joint pain to food sensitivities. That can be a really wide-ranging umbrella of health issues in itself and symptoms. So quite a few, yeah, quite a few. So if you have a health issue where you've got problems with uh, things like, food sensitivities, you're having this type of food and you're getting food sensitivity, you might find that you've got an unresolved leaky gut. So it's a good thing to either test or and treat. Now, in my clinic these days, I very rarely test for leaky gut. It's not that I don't, but commonly if I've done a microbiome test and see the imbalance in the gut, and some of those opportunistic pathogens actually create or aggravate or build an even bigger issue of leaky gut syndrome in themselves, we would then just assume we've got leaky gut. So after resolving the gut health issue with the microbiome, we would then, after that, go in and do some targeted intestinal permeability healing and sealing. So very important, we want to heal and seal that leaky gut aspect. So some solutions. Obviously, we've got to look at and make sure we know what the driver is. So that is a big aspect. I mentioned heavy metals. So for instance, if you've been doing a lot of work with your gut health and you go, oh, I've just had an intestinal permeability test and it's pretty high, and yet why? Because I've been doing all the right things. We probably need to specifically test for heavy metals and have a look and see if that is breaking the bonds in the microbiome and creating secondary issues in your intestinal permeability. And that might be an obstacle to cure. But let's just talk about leaky gut as a separate issue, yeah? Because we can, unravel this and get very complex with our chat today. But really, I wanted to just distill down leaky gut, what it is, how to actually test for it, how much does that cost, what's it all about, and what, could you have it, and then what to do about it. Now, as I mentioned before, underlying driver is the key, if we can work out what that is. So work that out. So that might take a diagnostic process of differential diagnosis, which you can do with a naturopath. That's part of the naturopath's business profile and experience of going through that differential diagnosis. We do a lot of differential diagnosis in my clinic because often there are a wide-ranging arrangement of symptoms plus some diagnoses along the way as well. So we do a lot of that. But let's get back to what would we do if we just had a leaky gut, and how would we fix that or correct that and heal it? So first line, there are some fantastic herbs that are very good at healing and sealing some of these membranes and barriers. Golden seal, fantastic herb for doing this. Now, not everybody can take golden seal. You've always got to cross-reference these things that I'm suggesting now with everything else in your case. And obviously, if you've got any sensitivities to these, you don't want to be taking them. But golden seal is excellent at healing and sealing all membranes within the body, including intestinal permeability. We use it often when we've got the permeability in the sinus passages, in the ears, all of these very narrow passages. They can become quite permeable. but also we think about this when we've got leaky gut as well. Licorice, really common herb that we use a lot. Now, be careful with some of these herbs. Licorice is also in high doses can reduce testosterone. So please be cautious if you already have low testosterone. You don't want to be driving it down lower with licorice. I did have a case last year where a young man had a history of low testosterone. He was taking all these things to help his testosterone, doing a lot of self-care, which I'm all for, but he was equally doing things that were sort of healthy under that wellness umbrella that were reducing his testosterone. And so his treatment was quite simple for me. I just looked at what he was taking, which was, they were relatively healthy things, but I just removed what he was taking that was countering the positive work that he was doing in raising his testosterone. He was equally having things that were lowering it. We just removed the testosterone lowering herbs, and his testosterone popped back up. So just be mindful. As always, I always recommend that you work with a qualified naturopath, herbalist when considering herbs, because they do work. They do have actions, and they're very wide affecting. So we need to be really clear on what your health case is to make sure that we actually don't work in a negative way with utilizing some of these herbs and nutrients. So licorice, marshmallow, beautiful herb for gut health. I love marshmallow. And then, with all of these herbs, you've got to decide whether it's best to take them as a tea. Do the active constituents come through in water distillation, or does it need to be alcohol distillation? Do you have an issue with the alcohol content? Does it need to be in tablet form? So wonderfully these days, as a herbalist, we have fantastic tools, and they come in a wide range of delivery systems. So that needs to be worked out in conjunction with your practitioner. So marshmallow, beautiful. It's quite sweet. I actually use it a bit in cooking, believe it or not. In the old days, we used to use the actual marshmallow and make marshmallows. You'll be familiar with the commercial brands, I'm sure, of marshmallows as far as the sweet is concerned. Now, chicken stock and bone broth in general, fantastic for gut health, but in particular for intestinal permeability. So very easy on, the gut, very easy to digest, really easy to consume these days. And I definitely highly recommend home cooked because we can really make it very dense in nutrition. Megan's just mentioned that she doesn't tolerate liquid herbs. So liquid herbs, Megan, as in alcohol distilled or water distilled herbs in general, herbal tea, do let us know and let's have a further chat about that. But bone broths and chicken stock in particular, there's actually a lot of research around this now. One of my patients, when I recommended chicken stock to her little family for their gut health recently, she said, "Did you know it's called Jewish penicillin?" And they actually are a Jewish family. And she thought it was hysterical that I was prescribing this as food as medicine. And there's fantastic research on the benefits for gut health, including intestinal permeability, and very good for nutritional aspect. So we want really good bone broth there. And I think that could be a topic all by itself on bone broth, how to make it, the benefits, what types we've got. I'm a great fan of chicken stock because it's really well tolerated, and I like to make it really nutrient dense. So we're getting all those nice antioxidants, etc. So Megan's just posted, you'll notice in the comments there, alcohol. Yeah, so that might be interesting to investigate further, Megan, at some stage. Is that due to liver function? Or is it some specific herbs that you might have a particular sensitivity to? And it can be from fructose as well. So if you have fructose malabsorption, and many of my patients actually do, then you can't deliver medicines in an alcohol form. We have to be very careful. So we do that in powder, we do it in tablet, lots of different ways, sometimes in teas, and we need to choose our herbs very carefully. So let's also talk about some nutrients. So CoQ10 is an overlooked, I feel, in a lot of clinical practices of the benefits in healing and sealing the gut. And and it has widespread action. So a lot of people think about CoQ10 as far as energy is concerned. And yes, we do use it at high dose medicinal level doses in chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia, and a lot of wide ranging actions. I use CoQ10, coenzyme Q10, a lot in my clinic. I do, as I said earlier, broad spectrum cases that might have chronic fatigue and microbiome issues, all sorts of things that can be involved. And CoQ10 is generally overlooked as far as gut health is concerned, but not in my clinic. We use it a lot, including for intestinal permeability, plays a wonderful role in healing and sealing the gut. So glutamine, most people have heard of glutamine, really wonderful amino acid, and certainly for gut healing we need a wide range of amino acids. Now glutamine's another one I'm going to put a caution on. Some diagnosis of cancer, it's not recommended to use glutamine, brain cancer for instance. So if you've had a history of brain cancer, please avoid using glutamine, but speak to your practitioner, because I have used it at low dose for short periods in some cases where there has been evidence of brain cancer in the past, and we've used it with success, but we've used it mindfully, and we've had a very comprehensive protocol put in place to negate any negative potential side effects for brain cancer. Now, some people actually also have a sensitivity to glutamine, so please be cautious and work with your practitioner so you can work out if there is a unique sensitivity. Glutamine, we have a lot of success in my clinic with using it concurrently when there are cancer cases, aside from brain cancer, and concurrently with chemotherapy. So a common symptom of chemotherapy is a leaky gut, and also food sensitivities and digestion imbalances, and just generally problems keeping food down. So we use glutamine at a very high medicinal dose based on individual cases, and we've been able to have people improve their gut health better than it was even before they had chemotherapy, believe it or not. So, but based on very high dosing of glutamine. But be cautious with it. Obviously, when you're introducing any natural therapies, work with your practitioner. Introduce one thing at a time. Make sure you haven't got an individual sensitivity. And I do have some cases where we can't use glutamine, so be mindful of that as well. Now, my old friend zinc carnosine. I love zinc carnosine. I think, again, it's highly neglected nutrient. Its specific affinity is for the intestinal barriers. So when we've had any sort of intestinal health issue, not just leaky gut, but anything at all going on with the microbiome, gut health, I think I always come back to zinc carnosine. It's very well tolerated. It's specific for gut health. Now, zinc carnosine is a type of zinc you would not necessarily consume or ingest if you're trying to correct your zinc levels or your copper to zinc levels. So that's a different type of zinc that we'd be looking at. But certainly zinc carnosine is what we want to have in place if we're having some issues with gut health, and in particular healing that barrier. Yeah, so intestinal permeability, it's got a specific affinity for cases such as leaky gut. So that's definitely my go-to there. Now, I'm not saying you need all of those. I'm not saying all of those are going to be appropriate for you, but just to give you some ideas there about, getting targeted. I would, with my patients, sit down and look at what the work is we've done already with the gut. And if we haven't done enough in that area, we'd work with general overall gut health first, and then we'd come in at some point and heal and seal that gut. Now, it depends on the case. A strong autoimmune case, I might introduce intestinal permeability healing right up front. But it just depends on the overall case, what work we've got to do, all sorts of things. So work with your practitioner to uh, look at what your priorities are at any one time, and make sure also that you've got the right dosing. Often I see cases where we're doing, I see people turn up at my clinic virtually because we're completely online, but they'll turn up and they'll go, I'm doing a lot of those things, and I'll look at the doses and they're not quite right. They're not at that medicinal level. So when we're treating a health issue, we need to make sure the dosing is a medicinal level. So keep that in mind. But also we want to make sure that we're not causing any problems. So that's why knowing your case in its complete entirety and detail, we can also avoid that we're not aggravating anything else. And I talked about that with some of these things that we've looked at here. So is leaky gut helpful to resolve? I think it's essential to resolve as part of a greater health issue. Is it common? I think extraordinarily common. I think that there are a lot of people out there that have been doing great work with their gut health and doing a lot of things, and it possibly is, a missing part of why things are either getting aggravated after they thought they resolved everything and later on they get things worse again, or why there's resistance about resolving other health issues, especially the autoimmune conditions as well. So I think it's essential as part of an overall wellness program and gut healing program. And I think it's so important. And I also think that a lot of people are talking about leaky gut as a standalone disease or disorder. It's not. Generally speaking, it's not. I always like to leave that window, that door open, because who knows, research in the future may prove me wrong there, but in my clinical experience, it's usually just a product of other things that are going on. So keep that in mind when you're investigating your own health out there. So let's have a look at some of the questions here. Yeah, so Megan, I agree. It'd be great to dig deeper, because if we've got an intolerance to alcohol delivery, we want to make sure we know what other delivery sources we've got of medicines, but also knowing why. So I mentioned fructose malabsorption, very undiagnosed, very common, increasingly common issue in itself. I see it a lot in autism spectrum cases, and even I think it was just a few months ago, I had a case, poor young little 4-year-old. He'd been treated by, and I use that term loosely, treated by many different practitioners. A lot of it was liquid herbal medicine, and he got worse, not better. And it was one of the first things I took him off was liquid herbal medicine. We then dug deeper, got a true diagnosis, and he's doing really well because we've been able to identify exactly what's going on. So fructose malabsorption is very underdiagnosed. It can cause candida. It can build up high iron, cause pain, ADHD, sleep issues, anxiety. I could bang on about fructose malabsorption for a long time, but I won't. But certainly as part of the greater gut health is concerned, we want to make sure what's going on there. Otherwise, we can aggravate ourselves by either drinking alcohol or having a medicine for the right reasons, but it's the wrong delivery system. And remember, these days, in modern naturopathic terms, we have unlimited ways of delivering things, even topically. I do a lot of dermal delivery as well. So whatever. Welcome, Claudia. Nice to have you here, and I hope you're enjoying this little talk. What have you said here? Is it best to get tested before taking any of those supplements? Well, May or may not be. Generally speaking, no, I don't. I really find testing doesn't bring a lot to. I don't think it brings a lot of bang for your buck, quite frankly. I find sometimes patients find it helpful for compliance if they know they're a high positive for intestinal permeability, and that helps them be compliant. But often, as a clinician, I can tell based on, for instance, the microbiome or what the symptoms are, through, long history of doing a lot of testing, it's fairly easy to see from my perspective. But certainly you could choose to go that way if that sits right with you and you're somebody that prefers to have that level. Also, it does give you a baseline, so later on you can come back and retest if you have the economics to do that. But it doesn't help much with dosing, etc. I find more of a microbiome test tells us a lot more information as far as treatment is concerned, so a lot better investment. But look, sometimes we do both, so it's not necessary though, because you're not testing the levels of those nutrients. These are nutrients used as medicine to heal and seal the gut. Yeah, and when you say, or can we start taking them to see how we go? Well, you can't actually see what's going on with intestinal permeability. So certainly we want to look at the whole gut health. Usually what I would do is, if we're not testing for intestinal permeability, I would correct the microbiome if we've got that test result. And if we don't have that test result, I would work on symptoms and then look at where we're at. And if there's symptoms of gut health plus autoimmune conditions or autoimmune symptoms, we'd also monitor those symptoms and then maybe check in again about that autoimmune condition. Or we could then later, when we've got no symptoms, retest the IP or intestinal permeability test and decide where we go there. Okay, yeah, I agree. It would be interesting to see how Megan's saying of her. Thank you for sharing, that private information, Megan. That's lovely that you're comfortable sharing about that. It's really helpful for other people to see how Megan would respond now after a lot of healing. So Megan's obviously done a lot of gut healing, so she may actually respond quite well to the delivery system of alcohol herbs. Remembering alcohol and sugar alcohols. So, they're all part of that same genre. So anything with a sweetener, if that's a sugar alcohol, anything ending in an OL, it's important to see how you go. But yeah, I agree, Megan. It'd be interesting to know. Is anybody? I'm going to open the floor up if anybody's got any specific questions. Really, leaky gut health, anything at all. Just pop your questions in there. Happy to chat in general. I've probably got another 5 or so minutes, so we can see how we go. Anything about me, gut health? Interesting. Yeah, Claudia. Well, I think we all do. Where Claudia's mentioned she needs to take better care of her gut. Yeah, well, look, sometimes it's not just care. Sometimes it's a good idea to jump in, get some diagnostics there, and then look at how to resolve those. And then after that, maintain and look after your gut health. So sometimes we need treatment, general wellness with gut, general treatment not necessarily is going to resolve things. Although I noticed that Megan did a lovely fermented foods workshop, and that's a great way of maintaining gut health. Now, some people have issues with some of the sulfur vegetables involved with fermented foods, and that could be a genetic issue that negatively affects their gut, and it's about the sulfuration pathway. So whole other seminar involved with that, but certainly general wellness and gut health principles are a great first step, Claudia, in looking after our gut. Let's not forget about stress. It's probably one of the biggest issues with gut health and why some people have difficulty with resolving their gut health, no matter what herbs, what treatment, what tests. If they're not managing that anxiety or stress, if they haven't changed lifestyle, so they're living a well-managed life or a good life, that's going to be an obstacle to cure. Scott, great question. What type of treatment would be involved in correcting Enterococcus fecum overgrowth? Well, here's the thing. We could talk about a wide range of herbs. Now, I'm a medical herbalist, so I'm going to think about herbs all the time, especially as far as you know adjusting the microbiome. But Enterococcus fecum is an opportunistic bacterium, a rather nasty one, I might add, and quite resistant. But I like to look at the whole microbiome. So it's not just a simple question of what do we do to treat that, because I could really lead you down the wrong path on that, and you could really hammer your gut with a certain nutrient herb to get rid of Enterococcus fecum, but it may actually cause more problems. So what we want to do is look at the whole microbiome. So those of you who have not done a microbiome test, what Scott's alluding to here is he's got a pathogen that more than likely was from microbiome mapping or some CDSA type test, and he's identified that. So, but that looks at all of your microbiome, well, as much as we can test at this point in time. It's very much a developing industry looking at the microbiome and all the bacteria involved in there. And we've got these beneficials that help us maintain and manage our immune system, help us manage the epithelial layer to our gut lining. So there's the leaky gut aspect. There are pathogenic bacteria that live within us. And these pathogens are called opportunistic because when I like to think about the microbiome like a shopping centre car park. So when there are empty car park spaces, which should be filled with lovely families, happy people, yoga people, all that sort of more positive side of things, that when there's empty car parking spaces, when we've got deficiency in beneficial bacteria, the opportunistic bacteria take up those spaces. And so one aspect is that we've got to fill those empty spaces with the beneficials. Now, not just with probiotics, but, Megan, I think in her group here has talked about foods. I've mentioned stocks, chicken stock, things like that. But we actually know now from research what particular prebiotic foods can feed beneficial bacteria. And we more than likely need probiotics as well. But we want to just not have general species of probiotics. We want to actually target that to fit with those specific deficiencies. Now, the other side of when we've got a pathogen, such as this Enterococcus, is we really need to look at some of our minerals and go, okay, do we have deficiencies that in our minerals that are creating a scenario where the immune system isn't able to keep check of these nasty, what I call bikie gang type opportunistic bacteria. So we need to look at those minerals. Zinc and selenium come to mind at the moment. So have we got adequate levels of zinc and selenium? And are they at a healthy, optimal level enough to support our immune system? So, this is part of that aspect of we want to look at other things. And of course, I mentioned before, heavy metals can play a role in breaking down those bonds, both in nutritional aspects and beneficial bacteria. There you go. So Scott's reporting in here, and thank you for sharing this personal health information, Scott, for the benefit of everybody listening. It's opportunistic, and it's one of many opportunistic bacterial pathogens that live within us. So these critters live within us. It's only when we have too much stress, wrong diet, and in this case, we have some antibiotics. And if we only had antibiotics. Now, Scott, can I just ask you a specific question there? And please, if you're not comfortable answering, don't. But did you have naturopathic care alongside of that antibiotic? And if so, what was that? And if you could share that with us, just to bring some perspective there. So post that in the comments. That'd be great, Scott. Thanks. Just to help guide us a little with our conversation here and bring perspective. So now I'm not anti-antibiotics, pharmaceuticals. I'm not anti anything. I'm very pro patient care and optimal wellness. I have a master's in wellness, and I went to that length to get that qualification because, from my perspective, wellness is where it's at. That means we're going to age well, we're going to look younger for longer. We're going to be able to, as we live longer, we're going to be happy and healthy and do all those wonderful things, because certainly we don't want to live longer and be very unwell, because that's just torture, isn't it? So when we're looking at taking antibiotics, sometimes it's necessary, but certainly I would not take antibiotics without looking at the nutritional aspects that that specific antibiotic might deplete. Yeah, so we can do that now. So this is where working with a natural medicine practitioner that's experienced in this area, if you do need antibiotics for some things, we want to actually make sure we don't deplete that. Yeah, and also we want to make sure that we're helping support the other bacteria, that beneficial bacteria. So that usually takes a very high dose of broad spectrum. I usually use a particular, it's very expensive probiotic when I've got a patient that's on antibiotics, but we get really good results. We're able to maintain very good gut health and not have things like antibiotic diarrhea and things like that. So that probiotic is a practitioner-only product called Ultrabiotic 500. Comes in little sachets. I usually concurrently treat with the probiotic during that period of antibiotics plus 2 weeks later. And then we look at the symptoms and decide whether we need longer or whether we switch to a lower dose and then go back into gut healing, mode. And also look at, why do we need that antibiotic? And maybe that's just a red flag that we need to go and fix up that part of the immune system or some other aspect of our health. Okay, great. Thanks for sharing, Scott. So Scott's mentioned that there was no naturopath at that point and didn't know about the side effects of the antibiotic. Look, I'm sorry, Scott, but that is so common to hear. And people aren't aware that when we do take any medication, pharmaceutical, antibiotic, or anything at all, there usually is a cost to nutrition, the microbiome, and general health. But we also know, from a naturopathic perspective, we know from research what to put in place to counter any of those negative side effects. So, and in my clinic, we do this to that level, even when we're working with things like chemotherapy. We know how to make that chemotherapy, support that chemotherapy treatment specifically to get better results from the chemotherapy, as well as what to put in place to negate any negative side effects of that. And I mentioned glutamine as one of those many things that we can use if it's applicable. So yeah, Scott, I'm so sorry to hear, but yeah, some concurrent naturopathic treatment would have brought better results for you. But look, it's never too late. So, Scott, when you're seeking out a naturopath, you want somebody that's experienced with repair post-antibiotics. And of course, if you've got any symptoms that are a result of that particular antibiotic, you want to actually make sure that you're seeking a practitioner that's experienced in that area so they can go through and just go back and correct that. And of course, as part of that, you'll probably find at some point that practitioner is going to look at the leaky gut. If we use antibiotics, we definitely need to go back and do some further gut repair after the antibiotics. Now, when I have that opportunity, I usually go pre-antibiotic care, during antibiotic care, post-antibiotic care. And if there was some reason for using that antibiotics, we'd come back to why was that needed and look at tidying that up as well. Sometimes it's the immune system. There's a wide range of reasons why we might be at that state of illness that we need an antibiotic. And the thing is, antibiotics aren't bad, and I'm certainly really pleased that they're there, because if I have a nasty bacteria that is, like a flesh-eating bacteria, I've got to have limbs amputated, within 24 hours of being diagnosed. And trust me, people, this happens. I want those antibiotics to work really well to save my life. Yeah, that's not the time to bring in, wait next month to see your naturopath if you've got a flesh-eating bacteria. And I know that sounds really extreme, but it does happen. An even bigger reason to be supporting overall wellness, your immunity, and gut health. So those type of opportunistic bacteria that can be life-threatening don't take hold. So, any work you do with gut health has lots of benefits in building resilience against any of those nasties. And I'm sure a lot of people are aware of the connection between gut and brain psychology. So it's going to help with your stress resilience. But of course, we also need to manage stress in order to manage gut health. Very important indeed. So I'll take any last questions in these last few moments. If anybody's got anything there, let me know too whether this was helpful. And whether it was in depth enough, if you need more information, all that sort of thing. You can always follow me up directly. I've got a public figure Facebook page, Christine Barnes, MWell ND. My clinic page on Facebook is the Bodyguard Clinic, and my website is thebodyguard.com.au. Instagram is Christine Barnes _ the Bodyguard. So please do follow me over on Instagram if you've got Instagram. But don't let Instagram stress you out. Remembering social media can be a stressor. We want to use these tools as vehicles for light and health, not something that stresses us out and consumes our time unnecessarily. Well, I hope, thanks Megan, that's great feedback. I'm available on Megan's page. Megan's invited me into her page as her Facebook expert, and I really appreciate that, Megan. It's very flattering of you to invite me. And I actually am part of a team of naturopaths, and certainly as I'm increasingly mentor practitioners Australia-wide and worldwide, they all have different price points. So if economics are ever holding you back in getting your health on track, do get in contact with me. And if I'm not the right practitioner for you, I'll certainly help you find somebody if at all possible. But remembering that naturopathy is private medicine, so it is not covered by Medicare, which is in Australia the government rebated, subsidised health system. But a lot of practitioners come to us for their own health care, and so we're commonly known as the naturopaths for naturopaths. I'm hoping over time to produce some more information with some of our blogs. We've just been doing a refresh on our website. We have got a little assistant on the website, so if you get lost on there or can't find the information that you're seeking, there is a live person. It's not a bot, a live person that's on there 24/7 that you can ask questions or get guidance of what to do or where's this information, etc. And that's just to help out when I'm doing things like this or talking to patients, that you've got somebody if you need to ask a question of. So that's all from me. I hope it's been helpful. I'm looking forward to working with Megan and possibly doing a few other health topics in this way. I'd love to carry on the conversation even online in this thread. So if you're watching this as a later, not live, and you've got questions, please feel free to tag me if you want my input or Megan's input, and let's keep the conversation going, and let's ensure that we get our gut health sorted, and in particular that we heal and seal from intestinal permeability. So that's all from me. Oh, thanks, Claudia. I'm glad you found it helpful. I'll still be online off and on during today and over the next week. Bye for now. Have a great day. It's a beautiful day here. I'm in Noosa. It's absolutely gorgeous spring day. I did a walk by the river because that's really good for my microbiome and my stress management. I did that early this morning, and I look forward to seeing you all and talking further online. Bye for now.